Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Around the Ropes exclusive. Now, guys, it's not so often that we get legends in this independent wrestling world who are still at the top of their game and who are still putting out banger after banger. And we're honored tonight to have one of them on with us who has a very big match coming up this coming Saturday. We're going to get into that with him as well. Returning to the show for the first time in a couple months, the legend himself of the Northeast, Bull Dredd. Bull, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm celebrating with a little bit of Bailey's and peanut butter whiskey. Just relaxing tonight, enjoying the podcast, talking about wrestling, my career, what's coming up. And, we always have a great time when we talk.
Absolutely. We definitely do. And so I just want to kind of look at, with the match you have coming up on Saturday. It's a very big match. It's an I Quit match versus Mooch, where if you turn around to the ref and say I quit, not only do you lose the match, but your career is now done.
It's sending me into an early retirement.
Which I hope that's not I hope that doesn't happen. But just to play devil's advocate here for a second,
right?
If that were to happen, and let's say Saturday is the last time you go into the ring, and I said this to you before we started recording, you've had a very long career. You've had a 23-year career, and you face a lot of the big names who you see now in AEW and WWE, and some of them that are on the independent scene. Do you have any regrets that you look back at your career and you say, I wish I did that, or I wish I had that moment?
Well, at this point in my career, I always look back and be like, yeah, sometimes I wish I did this or I wish I did that. Well, the bottom line, and is my answer for that I give everybody, is I regret nothing, because I was afraid of success, and I was married for half the time of my career, and my kids were small, and I didn't want to be an absent father. So to be, in this day and age in this business, there's a lot more exposure with social media and YouTube and, Facebook accounts and Instagram and, all these, the people, fan footage are putting up videos. And so the exposure where the big names, like WWE or AEW and a lot of like Ring of Honor, people get scouted really early, and at the time for me, we didn't have social media. I mean, social media was just starting out, probably maybe at the peak of my career. I had to make a decision what was more important to me, and what was important was my family. I felt that giving up my job, and my health insurance, and giving up my family to pursue something that wasn't 100% guaranteed wasn't something that I wanted to do. So, although it wasn't, because wrestling is not my livelihood, I still treated it that way. And I went about my livelihood the same way as I do as my professional career, in wrestling. I mean, you can't half-ass anything in your life. So the way you live your life, what you do at your job, and is the same way you live your life. So I kind of, everything runs parallel to each other. So I have no regrets, because I now have the relationship I do with my kids. And it's a post that I put up today in regards to Saturday. If my career were to end on Saturday, and I've been saying this, if my career were to end tomorrow, I'd be content with what I've accomplished and the legacy I leave behind, because people ask me what my legacy is. I'm going to be like, listen, I've maintained a full-time job, raised my family while pursuing a wrestling career. So, and I don't think that's unheard of right now. And like Mario Mancini says, I'm the last of the Mohegans, baby. You know?
Well, I totally see where you're coming from in that, because I've spoken to a lot of wrestlers in the almost 3 years that this show has been around, and I see the toll, and I hear about it from all these wrestlers. I mean, how much of a toll has the wrestling industry taken on you?
Well, the ride, I there was a time where I was in the ring maybe 5 times a week. And that was actually, 3 nights of training. And, that was like in my early 40s. And I missed those days. I can't put that work in anymore. The recovery time now from even doing a double weekend, 2 shows a weekend, it takes me about a week to recover. And I'm going to be 49 in September. So, he kind of, like I said, the recovery time ain't the same as it was 10 years ago. But luckily, knock on wood, I haven't had any serious injuries other than, bruises and aches and pains. And I guess maybe because I don't do any of the high crap that you see on AEW or Ring of Honor or a lot of what wrestling has become now, especially like in the super indies. I've always considered myself average, but kind of just remained old school grappling and just very aggressive. And I've always mimicked myself after like Stone Cold or like a big bruiser, but maybe like a bully. But, I guess as the older you get, the more experienced you get and the more mature you get and knowledgeable in this business, you learn how to entertain. Sometimes less is more. So I'm not going to say that it hasn't taken a toll on me, but at the same time, I work a full-time job where wrestling is not my livelihood. So at this point, I'm afraid of getting hurt. But you put a lot more stress on your body working a 50+ hour job than you do working a 10-minute match. So put it that way. But I put a lot of my work in the training. And I humbly say this, and I'm not going to lie. I've probably had more practice matches than I've had in official matches because, you got to take in consideration all the bumps you're taking when you're just training. And I would literally take students and have run a full match with them after training. And, sometimes I would do that, maybe 2 a night. So, and then you have a match on Saturday, with a referee and an official show. So I don't know. But eventually the bump card, gets full. But right now, as long as I'm keeping myself healthy, I'm going to go as long as I can, and I want to reach my goal of 25 years if I could get past Saturday.
Yeah, and I, as long as I've gotten to know you now, I've known that the 20, you keep mentioning about the 25. But before we go into that, I want to dive into a little bit. You said, less is more. And we see this a lot in AEW where you have a 10-minute match, but they try to put in 1,000 moves. And you see it where, like, for example, the Young Bucks.
Right.
And I use them as the example, not that because I'm trying to hate on them, but they are the clear example of this. It seems like any Young Bucks match has to have 9,000 super kicks.
Well, that's what that's what the rest of the business has become. It's a different. I'm not saying that AEW isn't entertaining because they play to both crowds. I say in some ways, bringing some of the legends and it has some entertainment value, but AEW is the alternative. So is TNA, where they play to the more, I don't say older crowd than it does the younger crowd that WWE gears towards. Because at the end of the day, everybody could crap and shit on a WWE, but where does everybody want to go work?
WWE.
All right, then. Maybe I tell this to a lot of people, every locker room that I go into right now. And I'm like, listen, look around. Maybe I can, and I could be wrong. I'm going to say like 60, 70% of you are not going to make 20 years or 2 decades in this business because they easily get frustrated because they feel they're not where they should be. they're not getting what they deserve or this or that, and they're doing all this high crap and stuff. And I don't know, maybe I'm one of the lucky ones, but I kind of tell people, I'm like, listen, if you want to be relevant 2 decades into this business, or going like as myself going in my third, you got to be you have to be relevant and leave a legacy behind. You got to create your legacy for the first 20 years. And then some people, I guess, don't understand that. And I don't know. I mean, my career is going to be coming to an end soon. I see it. I see the light. I see it coming. I wish I could do it forever, but like I said, less is more. Less is more.
I see what you're saying, and I think what you're looking for is that rest. And again, I'm not talking from somebody who's been who goes into the wrestling ring, but vicariously, I'm sort of in the industry because of this podcast,
right?
And I think the issue with a lot of the wrestlers nowadays, I'm not saying this for every wrestler, but a majority of them, is instant gratification. And what I mean by that is when you get wrestlers now, and you were saying before how, wrestlers now get very frustrated because they want to have like the 5-star match. They want to have the 9,000 moves in the match. And to me, and this is one thing I preach every week on our regular show, is storytelling. You don't have to, when you're doing a match, and again, I could be wrong on this, and you've had a lot more experience in the ring than I've had, so correct me if I'm wrong on this. You don't want to go into a match, let's say you have a 10-minute match, and you don't want to have a match where it's, okay, we have to hit this spot here, where it's like, okay, let's just do what we have to do, tell the story, and that's it. We don't have to have 27 other things thrown into it. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I mean, like I said, you're not a worker. You're in the business, but you're still looking at it from the outside, like, as a fan, if you can understand it. You have to look at it as, and I said this to somebody else, you have to look at what you're watching as you're about to commentate it. And if that makes sense, like if you had to sit there and commentate it and put in the words for somebody else to listen, to have a visual to it, you have to be able to talk about it and make that story make sense to whoever's listening.
No, it makes a lot of sense, because to me, and I said this before, I'm coming at this from a fan's perspective, but if I'm watching an independent show, for example, and believe me, I travel upwards of 3, 4, 5, 6 hours for a show sometimes. If I'm spending that much time in the car to come to a show to watch matches, the biggest thing that it drives me nuts is when you get a match and it's like, okay, well, we have to hit this spot, and we have to hit this spot. It's like I would say there's no emotional investment in it.
Right. Well, that's like the thing. That's the thing. It's you need to be like I was talking to one of the younger wrestlers on Sunday at a party, and he actually grew up watching me, and his name is Fly Noriega. It might be a name that you may know. And he got in the ring with me maybe at like 16, 14, 15, I think. And he said to me that one day he'll be in the ring with me. And, fast forward 6, 7, 8 years later, I wrestled him last summer at a brewery show for PAPW. And, and Roma left it up to me about like who's going to go over. He left it, to me, what I want to do. And I said to him, I'm like, listen, I have no problem putting you over. I just wanted it to make sense. So, he beat me. He went over. He got the 1, 2, 3. It brought him up to another level. Because me losing the match didn't do anything to me. He left the ring, got his character over. And at the end of the match, all the fans remembered it was me being announced as the legend. I raised my hand and I still got the ovation, So it's about the story. And you have a 10-minute match. The first 3 or 4 minutes, you could do nothing about establishing who the heel and who the face is, and you could do nothing. And I don't want to say where I'm going off track here. I don't say what I'm talking about, but like I think we've talked about this in the past. A 10-minute match is basically a 1 hour murder crime episode that you watch on TV. Mm-hmm. Or any movie, or any thriller, any horror movie, or any type of movie you watch. It's basically just wrapped up in 10 minutes or even less. You can have a match in 3 minutes and still have a shine, a heat, and the finish.
And there's a saying I've heard, because I listen to one of the shows I listen to a lot is Busted Open on a Sirius XM. And Bully Ray always mentions this, that one of the things that he always tells his students, and I've heard other people say this as well, is to keep it simple, or the KISS method, where you have like we were saying before, with these 10-minute matches, and you're adding more to it because you want to get your spots in. And I'm sitting there as a fan, I'm like, when you do those types of matches, to me, I feel like you're overdoing it a little bit. I understand, you want to leave a lasting memory on the fans, mindsets when they're leaving. I understand that. But I feel like nobody's going to remember. And the other saying I've also heard is, people only going to remember the finish of a match. They're never going to remember what led up to that finish.
Right. I mean, spots don't get you over. Storytelling does. Your character. And I think I've told this story before on your podcast. One of the Northeast wrestling shows I've done in Newburgh, New York. I was in a five-way with myself, Brian Anthony, who just recently retired, Cedric Alexander, who's in WWE right now, Adam Page, who's in AEW right now, and Caleb Conley, I think is still in TNA.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so there was I was in the ring with those 5 people. Now on that card was Kevin Nash, the Bella Twins. I think Jerry Lawler was even on that show. I have the flyer somewhere. Maybe even Mick Foley. I can't remember, so long ago. But I had a fan, who I befriended, and he said his first Northeast wrestling show he went to was that show. And he inboxed me, and he said to me, he took from that show 3 things that he remembered. I think maybe it was the Twins or something else. I don't remember. But one of the other ones was me. The lasting impression I left on just that match, and even though I was the first one eliminated, it's all about your character, your intensity, and and I only was in the ring for maybe about a minute and a half with those 4 other guys, and I was the one that left that impression on him. So you could just imagine what 2,000 people were thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I get what you're saying. And that to me is when you're in the ring, because another wrestler who does that very well right now is Chelsea Green on WWE. She gets maybe a minute and a half sometimes, but she makes the best of it. And that's what I think the same thing we can say with you in that match is you didn't have a lot of time, but you made the best of what you had, where that fan will remember you from that match.
Right. Like you said, people want to get off everything. I mean, but that's what the business has become. A lot of this, and that's kind of like what independent wrestling has become also, where, especially in my area, where it just seems like, and I'm not talking shit because as a vet, I could come across as bitter, but I'm just kind of speaking the truth because I kind of look back to myself and I'm like, were people thinking of me the same way when I first broke it? But I'm very old school. I came in, like I said, in the old school way, and and some of the old school ethics, and I'm not saying that they don't exist now, but what wrestling has become now, especially at the independent level, is, I don't know, it's more about popularity. It's about friendships. It's about cliques. It's about who you're friends with. And I kind of feel some of us old school guys, if, we're redrawing a different type of crowd, but we also work different. There could be a little bit of jealousy, but it's become what you were just saying about, like, with the Young Bucks. It's all about spots and who could do more than the other guy, and a lot of fast paced. And I'm not saying that it's not bad for the business, but I also say it plays to a different crowd.
No, I get what you're saying. No, I totally get what you're saying. And like, I'll put it this way: one of the best matches I've ever seen, and I'm talking WWE, AEW, any independents, was back in 2019 when Cody took on Dustin at the first Double or Nothing.
Right.
And I bring that match up because that match didn't have 9,000 spots in it. It didn't have your Asado moonsaults and your super kicks. It was simple, and it told a story.
There's a match that I would want you to watch, and I may have told you about it. It was myself versus Brad Baylor from PAPW, and he's hot right now. I think he even got a WWE tryout. He's one of the students from PAPW. He's making a good name for himself. I think he's only like 19, maybe 20 years old.
Yeah.
But I looked at him and I'm like, all right, it was all storytelling. And I looked at him and I'm like, all right, I'm going to highlight all his advantages over me right away. And that's how I basically put the match together. And even though he won over, which there's no big deal of who went over, what was important was the story that got over. He was stronger, he's faster, and and obviously he's younger. But I outsmarted him. So he overpowered me. He was younger and he was faster. You know what I mean? But I outsmarted him, with my experience. But if you look at the match, how I put it together, and it's pretty much me outsmarting him than, taking advantage of whatever. But at the end, he ended up cheating and winning. But it's all story. I mean, if people have to be invested in the story. If not, you're just putting a match together because you just want to throw a wrestling show together.
It's funny you bring up Brad Baylor. I just saw him for the first time actually at the Dynasty show back in February when they were at Empire Live.
And he's impressive, right, for being so young.
He took on, if I remember correctly, I think he took on Johan Nahara, I think his name is.
Is he one of the tag team guys?
No, he's the guy. He's the legit one. He's the one who.
Yeah, Johan. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Johan.
He told me.
I could be wrong on it. And
no, you're right. You're right. You're right. Because Johan told me.
And it was the first time I had seen him. And actually, I was sitting with KJ, a mutual friend of ours.
Right.
And he was even telling me about Brad. And it was the first time I'd ever seen him in action. And I was like, and the fact that you're telling me this kid is only 19 years old. I was like, first time I saw him, I was like, God damn, this kid is good.
Yeah.
And I definitely see a future with him, but with him, and I'm not saying it because the character he presents, to me, he can be a very easy heel in any company.
Right. He just needs a little bit of he needs some more. I've told him, I was like, you need a little bit more to your wardrobe, other than just coming out with tights. And I was like, you need something. I was like, I don't know.
Well, I know a lot of times wrestlers try to do the tights route because that's what got, Stone Cold Steve Austin over. The simple tights, the knee pads, and the boots.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, not everybody's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
But in your career, like I said, you've had a very long career. You've done both the heel and the babyface, correct?
Correct. Yes.
I might have asked you this when we had you on last time. I don't remember. Which one did you see? Did you feel easier doing, the heel or the babyface?
heel came more natural. Being a heel was very more natural for me. Uh, then I remember doing a show where, I was being the heel and I was getting over. At this point, it's really hard for me to, I'm not saying myself, like I can't, not that I can't do it, but because I'm known, kind of well known. And like I said, like over the last 3 years, I didn't realize till I got myself out there how known I was. To be the heel, more of a heel character, I, I was still getting over. So I would probably define it as me being more aggressive in a heelish manner, without being a super heel where I'm like bitching at the crowd and yelling at them. And, I was just you could still be a baby face and still be super aggressive. And that's what works for me. Like more of a tweener. I've worked heel and aggressive when I've had to kind of like work a younger kid, like a younger student, where I had to kind of be in between to help them bring them up in their match, in their character, and somebody to work and hopefully they can learn from. But I could do it all right now. I mean, like I said, it's easy for me to be a heel character, but now that I'm kind of used to being more of a baby face, I still go about it the same way, intensity wise, if that makes sense.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And you brought up New Evolution before, NEW, and there was a match you had posted recently, and obviously now he's in WWE. But you had a match several years ago with the now wrestler known as Carmelo Hayes.
Right. It was I had a 3-way. Yeah.
When you wrestled him, that many years, I don't remember how many years ago that match was.
Damn, 2017.
When you were in the ring with him, did you think in the back of your mind, okay, I see this guy being in WWE in the next couple of years?
No, I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I never kind of looked at it that way. I mean, the way I looked at it is a lot of talent that came from that area had a lot of exposure because WWE would use them when they would come to either Boston area or Providence or Connecticut. They would use some of that talent because of the connection. No, I mean, I never, like I said, I can't sit here and say that, like, oh my God, this guy's going to be in WWE. You know what I mean? But I mean, you can say that about anybody pretty much now. But back then, I mean, hey, he came from a good group of guys. Him, Dijak. Who else came from that school? Warbeard, which is I don't even know his name.
Ivar.
Briggs, Josh Briggs, who I recently saw at NXT, and he remembered who I was. And I never really, other than that, I mean, he was only one of the guys. What's his name? Carmelo was the only one I actually got to work a little bit with. It was a different. It was a different time then.
No, I get that, and looking at your career, obviously, like I said, hopefully your career doesn't come to an end on Saturday. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is there a match in your career that stands out to you in your 23-year career?
I think I've heard other wrestlers like get asked, like even legends get asked this, and I mean, I go into every match and I remember every one of them. I mean, we've all had crappy matches where I was like, damn, I wish that it sucked or I sucked, but I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I think the generic answer would be that I look back at all my matches and I have enjoyed all of them. I can't sit here and say, I mean, I've had more memories behind, be in the locker room than I've had in the ring. With interactions that I've had with either fans or legends that are now gone, or, like one of my favorites was Ric Flair. And just being able to talk to them. And I mean, like I said, something that I've said at this point in my career where I won't experience a lot. It's a great time for wrestling, and it's a great time to be a wrestler, and it's a great time to be a wrestling fan right now. But
I completely agree.
Things that I've experienced, a lot of the younger guys right now that are either starting out or getting over or at their prime or just beginning in their career, getting signed or et cetera, whatever, will never experience what I did. But at the same time, I will never experience what they have. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just paying it forward. There's guys that have done it before, probably are like unsung heroes. You know what I mean?
That makes total sense, though. And I know you worked a lot with Paul Roma, and up there. Is there any stories that you can tell us about working with Paul, as far as maybe something he has told you or something, or maybe just a funny interaction?
Well, there's something that it was his birthday last week, and I actually said to him, I was like, I just want to wish you a happy birthday. I was like, who knew that, I grew up as a kid watching you, that I now would be working for you. And he laughed. But one of my memories when I first started training, we used to train on Saturdays too. And Roma used to train another kid. His name was he eventually became, I think, a Tuki trucker, but he went under Alex Roma. And Roma would train with him at Saturday at Jason's school, and I would just sit there and watch. And this is like before I was married and my kids, and Roma actually sat there and broke down psychology of a match. And to this day, I look back at that and I kind of approach my matches that way, especially when he explained how SD Jones was a face versus, I don't remember who he was working, but he broke down. I was like, how do you distinguish a heel from two baby faces? And I remember him breaking it down, and that's kind of like the breakdown that I use. And if I've worked somebody who I'm a face and they're a face, all right, I need to be the aggressor. How do we lead up to that? So, for instance, like Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. You got two baby faces. How do you distinguish the heel?
That's tough.
You have to watch the story and how everything develops. Somebody has to end up being the aggressor, more aggressive than the other. You know what I mean? Doesn't necessarily mean they're heel. They're just becoming more frustrated. And the way I look at it is, if somebody's outsmarting me, I'm going to be more aggressive because I feel like he's making me look like crap. But I'm not doing heelish crap or heelish stuff to get cheap heat. I'm just being very aggressive. You know what I mean? And still tell a story in that way.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's the one thing I've learned with, especially doing this podcast. And the more I've gotten to learn about, the more of the behind the scenes stuff. And I'll sit there. I just said this in a previous interview. Yes, I get to know more about the behind the scenes stuff, but I'll never sit there and be like, oh, I can't believe, so and so is about to go over. To me, I don't care about that stuff. But when you see these matches, and like when I go to a show, for example, I'm not going as a fan. Yes, I'm going as a fan at first. Then I'm going as a smart fan. I know that's the right way to put it. But like, I'll sit there and be like, okay, you go from this point to this point. Now, that's my biggest thing is I will watch a match for that reason. Be like, okay, how did they get from point A to point B to point C to the end of the match?
A lot of what, the very first match is always the first match. It's the very important, the most important match of the night is the first match. It sets the tone for the show. And if there's a show with an intermission, you're pretty much having two main events. If you think about it, the main event of the first half, and you have the main event for the second half. You kind of don't want to throw everything to the fans right away, but a lot of, but they need to watch. I'm talking about the guys in the back when they're putting their matches together and talking or doing whatever. Watch the matches before. Know what people are doing. I mean, honestly, how many sling blades and super kicks do you want to see in a match where if you're like you said, even though you're doing a podcast, but you're there as a fan, you're also there watching and learning, but you're also there almost critiquing what you're seeing. But if you're seeing the same thing match to match to match, what happens?
Yeah, and I would be the first one, because I've done it before, where I go to an independent show, and that following Tuesday, I usually do the recap of it, and I do a concise version of it. And there'll be times when I will sit there and be like, okay, well, this match to me felt like the weakest. And the one thing I'll never say though is I'll never say that it was weak because of the wrestlers, unless the wrestling is bad. A lot of times, like there was a show I went to recently, and it was the second match on the card. And it was it was I think maybe it was 4 undercard, and then the main event was a Royal Rumble match. And I said this on the show the following week. The second match on the card, which was the women's title match, was the weakest match on the card. And it wasn't because of the women who were in the match.
Right.
It was, and I said it. And the one thing with me is when I give my critiques on the show, I'm honest about it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I want to try to, score brownie points. No, I'm going to be honest, because I'm looking at this from, okay, other fans might be saying this, but I have a platform that I'm allowed to express it. And I remember saying it after the show, that you had the first match, which was high intensity. It was like up here. The third match, which was, another title match, was also up here. So it's like, you can't have fans, I've learned, be at a level 10 from the opening bell to the last match. It's impossible, unless I'm wrong on that.
Well, matchmaking is I mean, like I said, that's one thing that I mean, I guess, I would be able to match make and stuff, but a lot of people just run shows and see the talent they have, and they just put matches together. But I feel like every show should be a story also, like, and how you build a show match wise should be the same as you build a match, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely does.
But then, like, as a wrestler, and I'm, like I said, I'll be straight with you, is if somebody who's not as knowledgeable as myself or a vet or whatever, somebody who's more younger in this business, or part and that needs social media, whatever, would look at you and be like, yo, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, they would look at you, be like, you don't know what you're talking about. If you could understand that.
I totally get that. And thank God I've never had to experience that part. But the one thing with me is, I think the way I put it is, I give constructive criticism.
Right.
I think that's the best way I can put it.
But you're honest, and you're like, listen, though I'm not an in-ring performer or a talent, I'm a podcast. I do podcasts, so I'm in the business and I'm interviewing you guys. But I'm still, as a fan, watching you guys, and I have to critique, giving my honest opinion. Because if you start losing interest in a match, I mean, like I said, this goes back to what we were talking about before, where everybody's trying to throw everything out there and doing everything they can possibly do. You lose a crowd. If you start losing the crowd and their reaction, it's very tough for a commentator, for somebody like you who wants to give them a critique or, like I said, a review. If you're not taking the viewer on a story or on a journey, you're as a performer, you're just doing moves because you think the moves are going to get you over, and that's not true.
And that's my whole thing is when you see wrestlers nowadays and they're doing moves for the sake of doing moves, to me, I lose interest because to me, it's like, okay, you're doing a super kick in this spot. Is there a purpose behind it, or is it just because you want to? And I've heard this saying from other, from other wrestlers and whatnot. They want to. A lot of times when that happens, it's they want to get their shit in. I've heard that saying plenty of times. And to me, if you're doing a match and you just want to get your shit in, but you don't want to tell a story, you have 500. You can have 500 people in that audience who are going to sit there and be bored out of their mind.
I'm going to ask you a question, and this is something you could go on for the future and ask any other wrestler on your podcast. What gets, as a wrestler, when you're doing a move, what gets you over, the move or the guy selling it?
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, I would have to, and again, from a fan perspective, to me, it would have to be the other guy. That's actually a good question. And just thinking about it quickly, I think to me, you can do any spot you can think of. But if the other guy in the ring doesn't sell it the right way, or it doesn't show that it's effective, it becomes a moot point and people don't remember.
How are the fans going to react if you could do all the spots you want? What are the fans going to remember?
The finish.
Yeah, what are they going to remember? The guy taking and how he took it. His emotion. You know what I mean? I mean, the super kick, all super kicks look the same. It's what's different.
Not only that, the other move that I think has become so saturated over the years is the DDT.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Have I used it? It's been a long time since I've done it. But I don't do it just to do it, to throw it in. I do it if I try to place it at the right time of the match.
No, that makes total sense. I totally, and that's like I said, Bull. That's one of the things I preach on our weekly show on a weekly basis is stuff like that. But I want to get back to the match that you have coming up.
Okay.
What are I know we're only a couple of days away from the match. I know this is a big match for you. There's a lot on the line here. What's your mindset going into this match?
Well, if you watched what I said when I signed the contract yesterday, my mindset right now is, when somebody, who's the most dangerous person in the world when they have everything to lose? They will do anything and everything to win. And that's my mindset because, Mooch is somebody that came into the business after I took a short leave of absence when I first started. I started in January 2001, and I stepped away from the business for 3 years. In January 2003, when I got married and my daughter was born, and I came back in 2006. And by that time, he was training. I think he started in 2004 or 2005. I don't remember for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a school, and he was training with me, and I kind of took him under my wing, and that's kind of like my career took off in 2008, and school closed, and my career continued. Working with NEW and all the legends, and the prime, probably the best time of my career. Where dreams come true. But he came back a year ago, and we kind of renewed this rivalry, and I don't know if it's just jealousy or just hatred but he expressed his feelings, and we had our match, and it was a no double DQ, and then he won the second match by cheating, and And I said I wanted one more match because I wanted to even it out. And he said in order to get him, he handpicked an opponent. I beat him, and it was just a setup because he said he wants my career on this line for this match. So he said I can even name the stipulation. So I was like, an I quit match, and so he wants my career. I was like, are you prepared to go to the extreme because his blood is going to be on my hands? And I've been through it all. I've been baptized by blood by Balls Mahoney, God rest his soul. I've been new jacked. I've been through it all. And sometimes I don't know if some of these wrestlers, they don't know what they're asking for when they really push a man to his limit if they're going to be able to take or be at that level. So I'm not going to sit here and I'm guaranteeing nothing. I'm just guaranteeing that his blood will be on my hands.
And I totally see where you're coming from because I've been in that position as well. When you have everything to lose is when you become the most dangerous. And I've seen it with other wrestlers. I've seen it with myself where all of a sudden your back is against the wall that much that all of a sudden it's like almost like the best of you comes out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I actually no, go ahead.
I've been through all the wars. And they don't call me the hardcore nightmare for no reason. It was a name that was given to me. And I didn't call myself the hardcore legend. The fans gave me that name. So
No,
that's it.
What?
No, that's all I'm saying is I have a legacy that I need to uphold right now. And if my career were to end tomorrow, I'd be happy, but I feel I have a lot more to do.
I totally get that. And then I was gonna throw up the poster here quickly, guys. This is the match we're talking about. It's Mooch versus Bull Dredd for PAPW. It's an I Quit match where if Bull loses, his career is done. Guys, doors open at 6. Bell time, it looks like is 7 o'clock. Yeah. Yes, 7 o'clock. Guys, this is if you're in the area, I would highly, highly, highly recommend going to this because, guys, this is going to be a battle, to say the least. But one more thing before we wrap up for tonight.
Right.
You mentioned also in the post that you put on Facebook, which, by the way, thank you for promoting the interview tonight. I appreciate that a lot. You mentioned also that you're going to be doing an authority figure at Kaiju Wrestling on Sunday.
Yes, this will be my third show for Kaiju, and they approached me about being a head referee, like old Memphis style authority, where I have the authority to almost like a general manager.
Okay.
Authority, and it's a new role for me. I'm not used to being an authority figure. I'm always used to being in the ring, but I'm still an active wrestler. But it's something that I'll be taking on maybe more as as my retirement years are coming. It's getting closer, or maybe even closer. But whatever happens on Saturday has nothing to do on Sunday because I won't be an active wrestler. But it's fun. It's like how did I say? You remember that movie Stand By Me?
Yeah.
When what's his name? I forgot the lead actor. I forgot his name. The shoot. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And he's like he narrates a lot of the Discovery Channel type shows now. He was like he's the HNIC. I'm like, well, I'm in the HBIC, the head beast in charge.
Yeah. I can see that on a shirt, by the way.
Yeah, it's it'll be something it's something in the works, but it's fun. But like I said, I'm not used to sitting there and watching wrestling. I'm very I could become very critical. You could even ask my son like, "What to watch wrestling?" to bring them to shows. And I'm like, I can't just sit there when I'm still an active worker. I need to be in there and doing it.
Well, you mentioned before, obviously, we've been talking about it a lot tonight, with your career sort of, getting closer to the end. Could this be the new direction, so to speak, of going into more of like I wouldn't say managerial role, but like almost like somebody behind, backstage almost?
Yeah. I'm really considering and being open to not going to sit here and say hang up the boots forever. More like I'll see you later and I'll lace them up if I need to. As long as I keep myself in shape and and stay healthy. It's going to be really hard to flip that switch off when it's been something that's been half my life. So I can't even imagine what other people think. People are like, no, you could do it till you're 60. Look at Flair or Sting. And I'm like, well, they don't have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
They make as much as I do in a week by working once a month.
And also, I don't think you're taking ladder spots like Singh did a couple months ago.
No. I'm not me and a ladder, became acquainted a few weeks ago, about a month ago. I climbed up a ladder and I'm like, damn, now I got to jump.
But last question I got for you.
Right.
I know, in PAPW, you're managed by Gemma.
Right.
How has that been? I know I asked you this last time, but how has it been working with Gemma? And have you given her advice? Because honestly, I think her career in this industry is just getting started.
Oh, yeah, just getting started. I've said to her numerous times, I was like, you are light years ahead of many people. We were kind of put together by accident because I was the vet. And it's kind of been, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a match made in heaven or something like that, but it was kind of destiny, pretty much, because I've been mentoring her and seeing her grow and as a talent and, just managing and stuff. And she will be in the ring at some point as a talent. Time is going to pass by fast. And I actually just said to her this past week or maybe last week that I'm happy that you and your family are part of my career as I'm still active. And, as much, and I'll be a part of yours as much as I can. And even at this point where, it's something like I said this morning in my post, my daughter, she's old, obviously the oldest, she's been a part of the first half of my career, knowing and understanding what I'm doing. She's going to be 21. Now my son, who is 16, I've been bringing on the road with me to shows and kind of seeing what I do. I'm making memories with him now. So kind of seeing where my career is going, and I'm experiencing it all with him now. So it's just about making memories right now. And, can I sit here and say that Saturday will be my last match? It's really hard to say, but whatever happens, I'm happy. I'm happy where I am and what I've done. And I will help mentor and guide whoever I can. I just hope that no matter what happens, my legacy will live on, especially in New England. And I hope that up in your area that the New England Beast, Bull Dredd, the Hardcore Nightmare, they know who I am.
Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they definitely do. Which actually, I know I said that was not, but I did have one final question. I know you're at the end of your career. You're sort of at the end of your career. Is there any promotion in the Northeast that if they were to give you a call and be like, hey, Bull, we want to bring you in for even a one-off or even, would you consider it at this point?
Oh, yeah. I look at it as like the next year and a half to possibly be kind of like work, maybe just at least once. I don't demand a spot. I demand like a full-time. I don't demand like a full-time spot on every show and everywhere. I'm like, listen, I am willing to come up to be like a special tag team partner, a mystery opponent, a mystery tag partner, something that would make sense. Because you've heard that saying, the fire burns the hottest when it's about to go out. And I'm kind of like known now more than I ever was. And I'm just enjoying this ride. It's not about money. It's not about attention. It's not about fame. It's about, I hope if people look at me and, if they can think of one word to describe who I am as a talent or just as a person, it's passion.
Well, I will say this much. I do hope that before you do somewhat, I don't know if you can say somewhat retire, but before your career is done, I am hoping to get a chance to actually get to see you in action at some point.
I'd love to come up, believe me. I mean, we never know. Maybe I'll come up and surprise you at a Dynasty show.
Well, I would definitely love to sit there and, get to see you in action at least towards the end. But Bull, I always appreciate you coming on because you always have a vast. What happened?
It's been awesome. Thank you.
Oh, no, and what I was going to say is you always have a vast amount of knowledge, and I always just love, picking the brains of the guys who have been in this industry because, a lot of times they're the ones who are honest about it. But before we let you go, though, where can the fans connect with you on social media? And if you want to, plug the show again for Saturday, go right ahead. Or anything else you have coming up as well.
Well, I mean, everybody knows. I mean, I'm under Michelangelo Kalo. I don't have like a fan page or anything on Facebook, but Michelangelo Kalo on Facebook, at Bull Dredd on Instagram, at Bull Dredd on Snap, which I rarely use. I got PAPW, Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling on Saturday versus Chris Mooch. I quit match. My career on the line. And Sunday will be Kaiju Pro Wrestling out of Bristol in Connecticut, not far from where I live. And if I could get past this Saturday, I have a few more bookings coming up, for 2TW. I'm going to be wrestling, what's his name? Cade Lathenbrock. I think you know who he is.
Cade Lathenbrock. Yep.
Yeah, Lathenbrock, and a fans bring weapons match, and OWF, which is I'm supposed to be scheduled March 24th in Bristol, Connecticut. But it all depends on how everything goes this Saturday. But I mean, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to honor my word. I'm going to honor the contract. If I lose, if I say I quit, I'll take an early retirement. But if I don't, I ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, Bull, the door is always open for you to come back on here whenever you would like. No questions asked. And like I said, it would be great to have you on again for, future stuff as well. Or just to have you on just to pick your brain about what's going on in the current product today.
I'm open for everything because podcasts are nice and they're enjoyable for me because I like to compare life and wrestling. They're like very parallel to each other.
I definitely agree. But guys, for the legend himself, Bull Dredd, I'm John. This has been Around the Ropes exclusive.
My shout out to who's probably going to watch this later tomorrow.
What happened?
I was saying my shout out to Billy if she watches it tomorrow.
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely give a shout out to. I want to give a shout out to Billy, and especially with Billy, with Lee, happy Mother's Day coming up. I know Mother's Day is Sunday, so I just want to definitely wish all the mothers out there a very happy Mother's Day. But guys, again, for the legend Bull Dredd, I'm John. It's been the Round the Ropes exclusive. Hit the subscribe on our YouTube page. Follow us on Spotify. And you're not going to miss what we have coming up. But you've been watching or listening to the Round the Ropes podcast. Catch you guys next time.
Bearded Beast out.